Welcome back, once again adventurers, to Let's Play Chaos Child. In the last episode, Takuru spoke with Hinai Arimura and Mio Kunosato about everything that Serika Noe had just told him before she departed Aoba Dorm. And yeah, I mean, it was a given that the two of them would still be suspicious about her, given everything that's happened. But this time is a bit different. Because even though everything that Serika has told Takuru up until this point has technically been the truth, neither of them can help but feel that things are playing out, well, a little too deliberately. As if the entire thing has been orchestrated from the very start and is still being orchestrated even now. Yeah, because if Serika Noe's intention was to keep Takuru's life safe no matter what happened, then she wouldn't have gone off to face Sakuma, let alone any of the things that she has been doing throughout this entire situation from the very beginning. But unfortunately, we can't dwell on that because, yeah, we need to leave Aoba Dorm when the time comes. Hopefully before it's too late. Anyway, November 6th, 2015, Friday, the same day, a little while after 4 p.m. Seven hours have passed since the beginnings of the festivities, and even as the sun began to set, they showed no signs of slowing down. Lines had started to form in front of every food stand and restaurant around lunchtime, and they were all still packed, even though it's the afternoon. There are over 30 concerts, from huge 1,000-seat venues with major artists to tiny little bars with only a dozen or so seats. Each one was standing room only. Guerrilla performance artists would approach the crowds hoping to attract customers and in turn attract crowds of their own. Over 80,000 people were still in attendance at the festival, which had gone far beyond the organizers' wildest expectations. Yeah, funny that, isn't it? Nobody's questioning why? There were the usual issues associated with big events like minor fights and lost children, but there have been no major problems so far. Wink wink. No major problems so far whatsoever. That was sarcasm, if you couldn't already tell. The police from the Shibuya station helped keep things safe, but the biggest factor was the volunteer staff. The organizers have been recruiting volunteers up to the last minute to handle the crowds, keeping everyone safe and in a mood to spend money. Many of the volunteers were victims of the original disaster, and the experience they gained in the earthquake had taught them how to get along and work with other people. When a major band had made a surprise appearance at the stage in front of the 107, there was a mild panic, but the volunteers formed a human wall to keep people in the crowd safe.
今日は復興を祝う祭りなんです。死亡事故とか起こすわけにはいきませんから。
Indeed. That's what the leader of the volunteers had said to an interviewer who had happened to be at the scene. He was an honest and sincere man. Face value. He was speaking from the heart, and he didn't mean anything more than what he'd said. But his words brought to mind a certain name and a certain face, both among the people who saw him on TV and among those who had heard him directly. The word that had made them think of that name was, of course, death.
なにあの人たち。
あれだろう、朝からさ、ニュースでバンバンやってんじゃん。
I mean the volunteers. Everyone there was hoping for the festival to succeed. But at the same time, they hadn't caused a big problem yet. There was one big concern on everyone's minds. When a girl and her boyfriend left Shibuya Station, heading for the stage at the cultural hall, they saw a group of people wearing eerie masks. There were over a dozen of them. And then another group came from another direction. Suddenly there were several dozen. Identical masks, identical t-shirts. 3 guesses as to what the iconography will be. And here is the answer. The faces of 2 fat men overlapping. It was... Dun dun dun. Yep, the 11th Rorschach, the Shibuya sumo stickers. Indeed. They said nothing. Here's where things start to get even stranger. But anyone who got close, whether by accident or whether they wanted to get a picture, would flinch away as they heard the eerie sound created as the sumos breathed beneath their masks. The man at the head of the group looked around and then approached a nearby street lamp. Then he took something out of his pocket and stuck it on the light. It was a sumo sticker. The owner of a nearby crepe stall saw this and frowned, but was too scared by their appearance to say anything. He quickly went back to dealing with his customer. It was something he'd seen again and again since the festival started. The only ones who saw this were people like him, who stood in one place the whole day as they ran their businesses. The majority of the attendees, caught up in the flowing crowd, saw nothing. Tell you who also isn't seeing this right now. Takuru, Miyashiro, and everyone who's currently over at Aoba Dorm. Probably should have left beforehand, because something tells me that it's going to be really hard to get out of Shibuya in the evening. Call it intuition. But if you were to take all the stickers placed on the ground, the decorations, the street lights, the walls, you'd have enough to cover the huge TVs at Shibuya Scramble Crossing. The stickers were slowly taking over, spreading to even places where no one could see them. They were like a physical manifestation of all negative emotions that lurked within the attendees. Ominous, isn't it? And finally night falls. It was about 3 hours later, around 7:30 p.m., when they finally exploded. It happened in the place that had been set up for the silent prayer that would end the festival. Right in front of the memorial.
見えねえよ、どけって。
マジで？あれ？
今すぐ死ねよ、死ね！人殺しが！
宮代です。宮代拓が慰霊碑前に姿を現しました。
But here's the thing though, Takuru should still be at Aoba Dorm. Something is definitely happening here. And we're finally back with Serika again. A little after 9 p.m., Serika arrived at the Hikariwo Building. Most of the attendees had gone elsewhere, and it wasn't as busy as it had been earlier in the day. She looked around and listened to the thoughts of the passers-by, using her telepathy.
うっぜえ、宮代うぜえ。あいつ本当にどっかで死ぬのかよ。逃げ出したんじゃねえの
All the errant thoughts. Beneath the subconscious.
早くしてよね。死ぬにしても死なないにしてもこのままじゃ帰れないじゃん。どっちでもいいからさ。長尺が。
And Serika once again emulating Takuru's behavior, because of course, given who and what she is, Serika whispered as she listened to the worthless thoughts around her. The couple a few feet away glanced over at her but quickly turned away. Serika closed her eyes so she could concentrate only on the thoughts around her, of which there are many. As of 9 p.m., all the concerts and street performances, as well as a few of the stalls, were closing up. The festival was nearing its end. After this, the attendees would gather at the specified time for a moment of silent prayer, and then the festival would be over. But the night is still young, as they say. And the night won't end just yet. The crowd seemed to be heading toward the station and the memorial. There were too many people still here for them to all fit in the memorial plaza. So the big VIPs, as well as the families of the victims of the quake, would gather in the memorial itself, while everyone else would watch the proceedings on the TVs in front of the station. And there, over there, off to the side, are the group of people wearing the sumo masks.
Sakuma は多分宮代を殺した後、慰霊碑前に遺体を晒すつもりだな。
Maybe, but that depends, because there are some things that you haven't told us, Serika and Oe. Both the TVs in front of the station and the memorial park were near the Hikariwo, but the park was just a little closer. And anything that happened at the park would be replayed for people watching on TV. In other words, more people would see it.
おそらくさっきの男もそのための道具。
Several hours ago, she heard that Miyashiro had appeared in front of the memorial. But she quickly learned that the report was mistaken. Of course it was. It was a fake. A man pretending to be Miyashiro, who worshipped him as a messiah, but the man himself looked nothing like Miyashiro. Yet for some reason, the media decided to report it as Takuru Miyashiro himself appearing at the memorial. As a result, Security around the park and plaza had been strengthened. And as a result of that, another rumor was spreading, this time that Miyashiro would be appearing there. It was almost certainly part of Sakuma's plot. Certainly. Serika opened her eyes and rubbed her stomach as if to check on her injury. It had been almost 24 hours since Sakuma had sliced open her stomach. She still wasn't in top shape. She had lost a lot of blood. And the dull pain in her head that resulted from resisting Sakuma's powers would come back the second she let her guard down. So she was being mind controlled, but, well, she can't be immune forever. This had been the result of her attacking him in top form last night. She'd survived working with the committee this long, so she couldn't shake her logical and very realistic doubts. Could she really kill Sakuma? Well, tonight we'll find out, won't we?
Miyashiro Takuru. Miyashiro Takuru.
And speaking of mind control, a thought suddenly came into her mind, and she frowned suspiciously. That was strange. She hadn't been trying to read anyone's mind. It was from somewhere in her field of vision. This was ungood. Negative thoughts flowed into her mind, one after the other. They were strong and vast in number. It was as if someone had combed all the final thoughts of all the people she had killed. She forced herself to look in the direction of the thoughts, and saw the group wearing the sumo stickers masks. She tried to squeeze them out of her mind. They slipped past her and echoed in her head once more.
Miyashiro Takuru. Miyashiro Takuru.
More of Wataru Sakuma's tricks. Only strong thoughts and desires could create this effect. It was as if all these feelings had formed into one single strong emotion, a desire for Takuru Miyashiro to appear. For the first time in a very, very long time, Serika was terrified. She could feel herself break out into a cold sweat. So even a delusionary existence like herself can feel emotions. Illogical and realistic doubts vanished. It didn't matter if she was capable of killing him or not. She had to kill him. Miyashiro had to survive. and for that, Sakuma had to die, and soon. And yet, there are, as Mio Kunasato and Hanai Arimoto pointed out, there are considerable holes in that logic of yours, Serika Onoe.
そろそろか。
She looked at her phone and saw that it was past 9:30 p.m. It was almost the appointed hour. Everyone inside the theater had probably been let out. Shibuya, the Hikariwo Building, the 11th floor. The entrance to the theater cube. At least that's how I'm going to pronounce it. This room was also the entrance to the office floor, and it was always crowded with people. But now there was no one here save for a lone employee and a single security guard. The festival event in the theater had finished up at 9 p.m. and there were no other plans to use it.
似合わないな。
No. Nothing about this seems right, Serika, and surprising that you would have that sentiment now of all times. The whole floor was lit up, giving its classy design an elegant atmosphere. It didn't at all match with what was about to happen inside the theater. Because by the time this was over, one of them would be dead on the floor. Either way, you're not wrong, Serika. Serika stood in front of the convenience store on the floor, and waited for the time to come. There was no sign of Sakuma. But then, a little after 10 p.m., she realized something was wrong.
Oh.
The lighting has changed, which is never a good sign. The employee and the security guard at the front desk suddenly started to leave. That is very suspicious. They dropped what they were carrying and began to stagger out, as if they weren't thinking about anything. Her eyes went wide, and she immediately tried to read their minds. Probably not the best decision. She felt a sharp pain in her head when she did. They really weren't thinking about anything. There wasn't even the meaningless subconscious noise that all humans produced. Nobody was ever like this. Nobody normal, that is.
思考誘導
Yeah, they're being controlled. The two of them walked to the escalator as if they were in a daze, and then disappeared. All that was left was empty silence.
まったく準備のいいことだ
That he is. And speaking of which, another violent pain struck her. This didn't make any sense. They'd already vanished. There was no reason why she should be hearing their thoughts. Where was this heavy strain coming from?
なんだ
Oh, this isn't mind reading. She felt something very strange in her mind and body. dear. And then she saw her left hand slowly begin to move, without her controlling it. I think you underestimated Sakuma there, Serika. Hopefully.
ああ、全員いつでも行ける。
Shinjo was out of breath. He'd run back to Aoba dorm to take the place of the other officer, who I hadn't seen because I was in Uki's room. I could tell he'd been literally running around all day.
よし、今から数時間ここにいるのは俺だけだ。外にいたマスコミ連中にも偽の情報をつかませておいた。今なら誰もいない。車でここを出られる。
Yeah. We need to go right now.
宮代や有村はともかく、後で交代した時、山添や立花優斗がいなくなっていることをどう説明するつもりだ？
She raises a fair point. That was a good question. There was no way to hide that, and it would be his fault if they went missing.
フェリックスならお前や百瀬さんと話している間に鍛えられたよ。心配ない。
Looks like Shinjo has learned some new tricks, it seems.
別にあんたの心配をしてるわけじゃない。あんたにはこの後もいろいろ動いてもらうことになるんだ。降格ならまだしも、失職されては私が困るんだよ。
ほら、これだから鍛えられるんだ。
Shinjo sighed. Then Uki came in, with Yuto at her side and a worried look on her face. Sadly, there is no time to explain, not now. She slowly raised her hand. The other hand was clutching Yuto's tight. Yuto's eyes were still red and he wasn't looking good. Uki seemed to be trying to hold him up.
どこに行くんですか?
Anywhere that's not Shibuya.
ひとまずは秋葉だ。
Akihabara, huh? Well, at least it's better than Shibuya for now. Although, realistically, Akihabara is, you know what? No, it's the best we got. What?
秋葉ってあの秋葉原ですか?
あ。
I've been sure we'd go somewhere less densely populated.
もっと遠くかと思ってました。
秋葉には久野里さんの協力者がいる。
Someone in Akihabara is helping Miyoko Nosato. I wonder who that might be, methinks. Shinjo looked at her. Someone helping her in Akiba? Perish the thought.
PC を使った情報収集という点においては、私以上の腕を持つハッカーだ。ふざけた人物だが、ある程度の事情も知っている。しばらくの間、かくまってくれるそうだ。
Ha ha! Finally, first bit of good news that we've heard all through this ordeal. It's been a long time, but It'll be good to see your face again. Itaru Hashida, aka Daru, aka Mr. Super Hacker. Looks like the future gadget laboratory is taking up refugees, it seems. For some reason, Kunasato furrowed her brow and frowned. Yeah, she's not wrong to do that.
それなりのマシンも融通してもらえることになっている。まあ、交換条件で何を言われるか分かったもんじゃないな。
Can't help you with that, I'm afraid, Mio. Daru's tastes are Daru's tastes, but when it comes to computer hacking, there is nobody better than you would want on your side.
Hmm?
Shinjo seemed confused. I wouldn't worry about it there, Takeshi. Evidently he hadn't met this helper of hers.
とにかく、ここからどれだけ離れるかは問題じゃない。渋谷という街を出ることが先決だ。一旦そこにとどまって様子を見る。
Yeah. What matters is actually leaving.
ということだ。有村さんはどうした？
あ、ノノの部屋で電話してます。
そうか。
Arimura had said she was calling her family before she left. But when she'd taken her phone into Nono's room, she hadn't looked like she was a girl who was saying goodbye to her family. It had always felt like Arimura didn't want to talk about her family, and I hadn't brought the subject up. So I had a vague sense that they weren't on good terms, but I didn't know anything else. Probably for the best.
よし。有村さんの電話が終わったら行こ
う。Well, hopefully it's soon, because our window of opportunity is rapidly dwindling.
車は玄関に寄せてある。マスコミはしばらく大丈夫だと思うが、乗るときは一応用心してくれ。近所の目もある。
That they will.
ゆうとも連れて行きますから。
ん？
Suddenly Uki spoke up. She must have been nervous because she clutched his hand even tighter. Well, we were not going to leave him behind. She was acting a little strange, but it was also cute to see how much she had cared. I couldn't help but smile. I looked at Shinjo and saw that his expression was much the same as mine.
もちろん、最初からそのつもりだよ。いいかな、ゆうとくん。
うん。
Yeah, it is what it is, but we can't just leave you in this place. Yuto nodded, and then he looked at me.
タクル兄ちゃん。
ん？
お父さんはどこにいるの？大丈夫なの
？The one subject that we really do not have time to talk about. Suddenly, I didn't know what to say. Yuto didn't know anything about what was going on. Nor did Uki, who was looking at me and expecting an answer. Well, we could give a plausible lie, but it would still be a lie nonetheless. It hurt to see how worried they looked. All I could do was tell myself that I couldn't make it any better.
後で話すよ。
Which, to be fair, is the truth.
後っていつ
I don't know, Yuto. I really don't know.
秋葉原について落ち着いたら必ず。
Well, at least Takuru does, but well, whether or not we actually make it to the future gadget laboratory in Akihabara remains to be seen. But Yuto's not convinced. I could tell Yuto was struggling with his feelings. Now was his turn to grasp Uki's hand tightly.
わかった。絶対だよ。
That we will.
あ、ほら、荷物取ってきな。
うん。
May not be much of an answer, but it's all there is. The two of them must have felt the exact same way as they went to their rooms, still holding each other's hands. Shinjo looked at me with a pained expression. He knows what's up.
大丈夫です。
And that's all we need to say on that subject. Of course, that was a lie, but Shinjo was nice enough not to say anything.
新庄さん、一つ確認したいことがある。
Kunasato stared at the hallway where Uki and Yuto had just left as she spoke. I could tell from the way she was acting that it had something to do with Sakuma.
2時間半くらい前か。慰霊碑公園に宮代拓の名を語った狂言者が出ただろう。
Indeed, even though that was complete and total fabrication, it did have the desired effect. People are taking notice. I'd remembered the news I'd just seen on my tablet. The TV news and Twip Open had all been talking about how I'd appeared at the memorial park. So, I guess I was wrong. I guess Takuru and the others were keeping up to date with everything that was going on in this particular evening. But, of course, everything previously was a lie. I was right here.
厳重注意くらいで。明日には釈放か？
その予定だが。
そいつには悪いが、別件でも何でも構わない。数日間交流しておいてくれないか？
Shinjo seemed to know what she was getting at. He looked out the hallway too.
佐久間の仕掛けだと。
She nodded. And he's not the only one.
タイミング的には狂言者なんていくら湧いてもおかしくないが、仮にも宮代拓になりきろうとした人間だ。何の工夫もなく名前だけを語ったのが気になってな。宮代との違いなんて遠目からでも一発でわかるはずだろ。
It's true he wasn't a ChäoS child syndrome patient, Shinjo said. That was confusing. When I'd seen the man on my tablet, his height and age had been mostly the same as mine. From a distance, it would have been hard to tell us apart. And what did ChäoS child syndrome have to do with it, when that was just a type of PTSD, Takuru? You only knew.
できれば、そいつのここを調べてみたい。
Kunasato tapped at her temples.
わかった。なんとかしてみよ
う。Well, that's all well and good, but the question remains, how soon are we getting out of here? It was also strange to see how easily Shinjo agreed to keep an innocent man locked up.
そろそろ出発しよう。有村さんにもそう伝えてくれ。
Yeah, the sooner the better. He pointed to the clock before I could ask any questions. It was 10 p.m.
はい。荷物はもうまとめてありますから。あれ
That's, not a good sign. The lights are out. I opened the door to Nono's room to tell Arimoto it was time to go, but there was no one there. The lights were off too. Was she done talking on the phone? Which would mean that she was having Kazuki get the last of their things together. So she'd probably be in the dining room, or maybe Uki's room. Come to think of it.
結局、和樹を最後まで付き合わせちゃったな。
Yeah, that we did, but here's the thing, Takuru. That's not what's worrying me right now about the situation. Kazuki wasn't involved in this case directly, but she was helping a lot, just because she was a member of the newspaper club. Still, I couldn't ask her to come with us, even though she probably would. While we were waiting for Shinjo, she tried to tell us that she'd come too, of course using only a series of mumbles and gestures, like always. But I'd refused, even though I was grateful from the bottom of my heart. She seemed unsatisfied, but I'd finally gotten her to agree to it by promising to keep in touch and come straight to her if we needed help. I couldn't cause any more trouble for someone who wasn't part of the case.
当事者か。
I was suddenly conscious of the smells in Nono's room. Without bothering to turn on the lights, I shut the door behind me and walked over to her desk. I ran my hand along it. And only then did I realize that it was the first time I'd been in here since her death. That's right. Nono wasn't supposed to be a part of the case. And yet, she was.
なんでだ？ジョーちゃんは幸せにならなきゃいけねえ子だろうがよ。
That she was, Ken. That she was. I knew that. He was right. She wasn't supposed to die. There was no reason she deserved to die. She was simply killed because she learned Serika's secret.
尾上。
What was her real goal? I remembered what Kunisada would ask me this afternoon. What was she really after? I almost screamed as I heard a loud noise from inside my bag. It was the sound of my phone vibrating. I quickly flipped over the bag and spilled its contents out onto the floor. At a time like this. Never a good sign. I picked up the phone off the floor and read the words unlisted caller in the darkness. Oh God. That was kind of creepy. I did not have a good feeling about this, and calling now is probably going to be a very bad thing. Afraid, I touched the answer button. Oh, Takuru. You've just sealed out all our fates.
誰だ？
Oh God.
一つ言い忘れたことがあってな。
Serika. But, The fact that we're getting a call from her now doesn't fill me with confidence.
お前
I moved the phone away from my ear in surprise. It was Serika. There was no mistaking it. I checked the time on the phone without even thinking about it. 10:03 p.m.
話を聞け。すぐに終わる。
なんでお前
I realized how hard my heart was beating, and I put the phone back up to my ear.
そんなことはどうでも。
I heard a sudden abrupt noise. Had she dropped her phone, or had something happened? I listened carefully, so not as to miss a single sound. My hands were trembling violently. I hated it. And after I waited a moment,
宮代、聞いているか。
her voice was somehow weak and feeble. Something was off about the way she was acting.
聞いてるなんだよ
一つ言い忘れたことがあってな。
It was the same thing she just said.
おいどうしたんだなんか
お前の両親を殺したのは私だ。
I could hear the sound of the words she made, but I couldn't understand the meaning of the words themselves. But for some reason, my hand stopped shaking, and suddenly it seemed like everything around me had faded away into a white blur. What? The words were stuck in my throat. I couldn't speak.
6年前、渋谷地震の時、あの避難所で、お前の実の両親を殺したのは私なんだ。
The moment that Serika Noe was rebooted into existence. Once again, I could hear the words, but I didn't understand them. Yeah, the memory that is locked behind your subconscious.
Huh?
You're going to have to face it sooner or later. My cheeks suddenly felt hot, and my blurry vision came back into focus in the dark room. Only then that I realized what she had said. But what I felt wasn't rage.
なんで
I believe I will tell you the answer, Takuru, because it was your wish. It was an important event from my past, but one I'd totally forgotten, and one that I have now completely spoiled, even though it's, well, even though Takuru is trying to hide the answer from himself. My parents hadn't died in the earthquake. Someone had murdered them at the shelter. It was what Nono refused to tell me when I'd woken up from my coma. That was why she lied to me. And that's why I'd run away from Aoba Dorm and gone to live in Miyashita Park.
なんで
I repeated. Why would she do that? Why would she tell me that now? Because time's run out. All I could hear was her pained breathing. I kept waiting anyway. I couldn't hang up the call.
今伝えなければいけなかった。言い忘れていたんだ。
だからなんでなんだよ。
I yelled at Serika as she repeated herself. And she hung up.
おい、尾上、尾上。
Suddenly the call ended. She'd hung up. I tried to call back and realized it was impossible. It was an unlisted number.
一体何なんだよ。
I whispered, knowing I wouldn't get an answer. Really, what the hell? What was the point of calling me like that? Because, unfortunately, Serika's plans have started unraveling. And ours will too if we don't get the hell out of Dodge. No, there was a bigger question. Why?
尾上は何のために生まれたんだ。
That day, I happened to meet my parents at the shelter. And then I had a terrible headache. That was probably when Serika was born. And then my parents were murdered in the shelter. Which would mean that she murdered them right after I created her. My thoughts were a mess, and it was hard to think, but something told me I had to figure this out. Serika said her goal was to keep me alive. Would killing my parents help me with that? Mum and Dad were trying to get me out of the shelter. Killing them would only make me less likely to survive, not more. Just like Kurosato said, it didn't make sense. That's right. What Serika was saying didn't make sense. The very first thing she'd done after being born didn't make any sense. Which meant...
あいつの目的は僕を生かし続けることじゃない。
Suddenly I found myself looking at the picture on my phone. It was the photo of me and my family from Aoba dorm. It was the same as what happened with Nono. Sure, she figured out who Serika was. But if Serika's goal was keeping me alive, would that mean killing Nono? Nono would always try her best to protect me. She'd even risk her life to do so. Which meant that for Serika, it would be better to keep her alive. She could have just done what they did with Ito and used mind control to alter her memories about her real identity. Unfortunately, her power was mind reading, not mind control. So why didn't she? Well, why did she have to kill Nono? Did she have some other goal? Possibly. Was that why she had to take Nono's life? If that were the case, then I could feel a certain desire welling up within me, one I hadn't felt in a long, long time. I would find out why. And I would find out if my ridiculous idea was true. And for that to happen, I have to go there. No matter how things ended up.
本気かよ。僕は。
Unfortunately, doing that would ultimately break both of your promises to Kurisu. I checked the time on my phone again. 7 minutes later. There were 18 minutes left until the moment when everything began. I laughed a little and ran my hand along Nono's desk again. Was I betraying Nono again? She was still alive. Would she have slapped me across the face if she found out about it? Possibly. Unfortunately, Kurusu did the exact same thing when she went after Serika. You lied too in the end. You lied to protect me. So I'm going to do the same. Because this is about you, and you mean everything to me. This is about the reason why you died.
何も知らなくていいなんて、そんなのごまかしだよ。
Unfortunately, Takuru, if you do this, you won't just be betraying Nono's wishes, you'll be betraying the wishes of everyone downstairs. Of course, thinking about what I was about to do terrified me. But I wasn't going to change my mind, no matter what. And it's an eye. Surprisingly, it was Arimura, not Nono, who slapped me. She hit me so hard that the impact traveled all the way to my ears and made them ring.
バカ言わないで。何かっこつけてるんですか。何笑ってるんです。
いや、やっぱりそうだよな。
I put my hand to my cheek where she struck me, and it felt a little hot. I'd laughed because it hadn't hurt as hard when Nono did it. Nono was used to slapping people's cheeks after all. Or maybe she was just really strong. But Arimura seemed to think I was laughing because I wasn't worried at all. Her shoulders shook more violently with rage.
危険すぎます。向こうが何を企んでるのかわからないんですよ。
No, we don't.
話を聞きに行くだけだ。多分大丈夫だと思う。
そんな嘘つかないでください。私に嘘が通じないのは分かってるでしょ。
We do. Arimura was out of breath and seriously angry. She was worried about me.
タクルさん。
Uki and Yuto were standing next to her, looking worried. I leaned down so I was at their height.
安心してくれ。話を聞きに行くだけっていうのは本当だから。
でもその先は嘘だろ。お前は多分殺される。
久野里さん。
Of course I knew that. There was a good chance I'd be killed. And Sakuma would be the one who killed me. But I wish she wouldn't say it in front of Uki and Yuto.
お前は喧嘩すらしたことがない。違うか。
はい。でも。
I had to go. My head knew it was stupid, and my heart was filled with terror. But there was something even deeper that drove me forward.
クルス先輩はそんなこと絶対に望んでない。
え？
ウキから 手紙のこと聞いたんです。
そっか。
クルス先輩の気持ち踏みにじるんですか？
そうだな。あいつきっと怒ると思うけど。
And she probably slapped me hard across the face, just like Arimura did.
でも僕は行くよ。
Arimura looked like she was about to raise her hand again. But then she stopped, clenched it into a fist, and lowered it. Her eyes were a little red as she glared at me.
なんでそんな。
ごめん。
Her voice was so soft I could barely hear it. I lowered my head, unable to even look at her.
ウキとユウトのこと頼むな。
知りません。先輩は長男でしょ。ちゃんと帰ってきて自分でお兄ちゃんをやってください。
You're terrible, she whispered as she left the room, with tears in her eyes. And Kazuki agrees. Someone suddenly waved something in front of my face, and I leapt back. Kazuki had come up next to me. I wasn't sure when. She always surprised me like this.
お前まだいたのか。
Yeah, she never left.
うん。
And she's mad. Very mad. I can't leave you all here, her face seemed to say.
うん。
And it's a lollipop. She was holding pieces of candy on sticks. How many of these did she have? Far too many. I couldn't refuse her, so I took them and put them in my pocket. I'll probably never eat them though.
最後まで付き合わせて悪いな。ウキたちのことを見送ってやってくれ。そうしたら気をつけて帰れよ。
I didn't think she'd do it, but I didn't want her going with the two of them. I feel terrible for her family if that happened.
うん。
She nodded like she always did. I tried to make sure that that was a yes, but before I could, she ran out the room after Arimura. Kunosada was here too, so it would be okay, right? Probably not. She would make it home, right?
タクル兄ちゃん。
And finally it's Yuto. Yuto spoke up, afraid, as he saw me watch her go. To be honest, I wasn't sure what to say. Anything I said felt like it would just make him more nervous. I tried to choose my words carefully, but in the end, this was all I could come up with.
行ってくる。後で必ずユウトたちと合流するから。
I could tell from his face that he realized it was one of the white lies that adults often tell children. But he didn't say anything. He just looked at me with eyes that were redder than Arimura's.
いってらっしゃい。待ってますから。
ああ。
ずっと待ってますから。
As long as it takes, you say.
ああ。
You could be waiting forever.
僕も待ってる。ずっと、ずっと。
ああ。
Maybe Yuki's hand on his gave him strength, because he finally forced himself to say one last thing. I'm sorry, Yuto. Thanks, Yuki.
じゃあ行ってくれ。
I checked the time. There wasn't much time left. And if I stayed here any longer, my resolve would begin to waver. I nodded one last time at the two of them, then turned around. Looks like we're doing this. Because of course. It was decided that Shinjo would drive me to the Hikariwo. I wanted him to take the others to Akihabara as soon as possible, but I didn't see how I could get through the area around Shibuya Station on my own.
Miyashiro.
As I left again the car, Kunosato called to me from behind.
スマホは持っているな。
He does. I put my hand inside my pocket to check. Of course it was there.
持ってますけど。
何でもいい。もし委員会の情報を手に入れたら、すぐに連絡しろ。
Very well then. I chuckled. That's exactly what I expected her to say. I didn't know if I'd find anything, but I promised that I would.
尾上からは、お前を渋谷から脱出させるよう言われている。それを承諾したのは、能力者を渋谷から出せば委員会に近づけるというあいつの言地があったからだ。
はい。
かといってお前自身がそれに逆らう決断をするのならそれを止める義理はない。別にお前にこだわる必要はないんだからな。山添や有村さえいればそれでいい。
Fair enough.
ねえ、そうですね。
She was correct. If getting a gigglomaniac out of Shibuya would cause something to happen, Uki and Arimura would do just as well as I would.
だからお前のことは待たないぞ。
Her words seemed to be testing my resolve one last time. Joe looked her dead in the eye and answered.
構いません。分かってますから。
But for a while after that, she said nothing. She seemed to be for once at a loss for words. I frowned. Did she not like that answer?
何か。
お前のさっきの話だがな。
She finally opened her mouth hesitantly. She was probably talking about the call I'd gotten from Serika when she told me that she was the one who'd killed my parents.
それが事実だとするなら。
何ですか？何か思い当たることでも？
いや。
Yeah, I knew you were gonna answer like that, Mio. Kunosato probably found Serika's words strange just as I did. They didn't make sense. And Kunosato probably had a theory of her own, and one she was reluctant to share. But in the end, she put her hand on my shoulder without saying a word. Huh? Until now, all she'd ever done was grab me or choke me, so I was surprised. I never expected this.
どのみち、お前が確かめるべきことだ。せいぜい悔いのないようにするんだな。
That's probably another promise we can't keep. We're gonna have so many regrets. And the words he said were different than usual too. Kunosato was saying something nice to me, a gigglomaniac.
なんだ。
いえ、その。
I was so surprised that I said something I shouldn't have.
どうせなら、ケイさんの締めの一言でお願いします。リスナーだったんです。
ふざけるな。情報操作の放送以外であんな八方美人な人間を演じるのはごめんだ。とっとと行け。
It was a hope, but yeah, denied. She pushed me away with the hand she just placed on my shoulder. I suddenly felt embarrassed. Why did I say that? Why did you say that? I was so embarrassed that I tried to hurry in the car. Kunosato looked at me and said,
どうしても聞きたいなら次の放送まで待つんだな。
Well, lo and behold, you might actually get your wish there, Takuru. Even if K doesn't exist. Just a voice on the internet. I turned around and looked at her face one more time. Her features were elegant, and her beautiful almond-shaped eyes were always frozen cold. They never betrayed what she was really thinking. Her personality was as cool as ice, befitting a dedicated scientist who was always willing to do whatever it took to achieve her goal, regardless of the cost. But sometimes I caught a glimpse of some burning passion inside her. She really was a mysterious girl. Alright, there was one last thing I had to ask her, since this might really be my last chance.
なんだ、人の顔をじっと見て。
久野里さんは何の能力を持ってるんですか？
なんだと？
The distance between us had started to shrink, but it grew back with that one question. I felt all the air around me freeze. I panicked.
だって見たんですよ、久野里さんの部屋で。
何をだ？
ディソードです。あれは久野里さんのものでしょう。
Yeah, the sword in the apartment building. But was it real? Or was it fake?
は？
I guess that should be good of an answer. Just as I thought things between us would end with another series of cold insults from her, Kunosato started to laugh. She kept laughing in a low voice as I stood there with my mouth hanging open. All I could do was stand there and watch. I didn't know Kunosato could laugh like that.
お前、本当に真のギガロマニアックスなのか？本物と偽物の区別もつかないとはな。
偽物？
あれはただのレプリカだ。研究用のな。6年前の資料を取り寄せて、アメリカの私の研究室が作った。ばらつきがあるにしろ、ディラックの海とのパイプがなぜ剣という形を取るのか、その解明をしようとしたが無駄だった。で、廃棄されたガラクタを押し付けられたわけだ。
In other words, Mio Kunosato was not a gigalomaniac.
あんなもの邪魔になって仕方ないが、まあ物干し代わりに使っている。
And then she laughed again. After she was done laughing, she pushed me into the car. Before she closed the door,
ああ、そうだ。お前の同級生、伊藤だったか。あいつはなんとか助かりそうだぞ。
I think we need some clarification on the word survive, because he might be alive.
忘れてるようだが、それと引き換えに、お前は私の実験台になると誓った。その約束、戻ってきて、ちゃんと果たせよ。
Then she closed the door. I nodded from behind the window and mouthed the words, "Thank you for everything." Everyone really was trying to make me feel better. Everyone really did want to see me again. But now I was going down alone down a path that meant that might never happen. A very lonely path. Yes, indeed. But that is going to bring an end to this episode of Let's Play ChäoS Child, and when we return, we shall storm the gates of the Hikariwo Building and confront Wataru Sakuma in his lair. If only things could be that simple. As always, adventurers, until next we meet.